Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Lion Zone, where you'll learn to be a lion and not the prey in a world of hungry jackals and vicious wolves. I'm your host, Steve Johan. For more about me, visit stevejohan.com, and you can find more about me also on Substack under stevejohan.substack.com. I've got another great show lined up for you and a great guest that you're going to want to hear all about, because he has some really good answers for those who are suffering from cancer. But before I introduce my guest, I want to start things off with a song that will set the stage for today's show. And here we go. Well, Bob, who do you think that is? Do you even recognize? I'm not sure if that's the genre of music you're familiar with, but do you ever remember that song?
Really, no. But I like the beginning where it said I'm at the twilight of my life, because that's about where I am. And it tells you that my genre is more late 50s and 60s. So
yes.
No, I don't recognize it.
Well, it's called The Healer, or Healer by Sweet. It was put out in 1976, and I believe it's a tip of the hat to Jesus being the great healer as reflected in the following lyrics. I met
Amen.
the healer in the twilight of my life. He was a purity in my madness side. He take me far beyond the sunshine and the snow. My faith in him ignites a charismatic glow. Cure me, cure me, cure me. And he goes on. He leads me through the twisted chasms of my mind. He saved me from the fated final sacrifice. He spoke to me with the palm of his hand. I hear you calling. And then it goes into the refrain, deliver me, deliver me, deliver me. And I thought that was very apropos. That is not a Christian band by any stretch of the imagination, but somehow that came into their song repertoire. And we're talking about being cured of cancer. And I want to introduce my guest, and his name is Bob Wright. He is a cancer survivor, founder of the International Wellness and Research Center. He's the author of Killing Cancer and Not People, and is an international speaker, advisor who helps people with suffering with cancer to find clinics and protocols outside the AMA-approved medical system that naturally assist their bodies to heal themselves and to truly find full recovery from cancer to live a longer and more productive life. You can find more about his work at iwarc.org. And so thanks, Bob, for coming on with me. I'm looking forward to this. And by the way, folks, I have the book, Killing Cancer, Not People, and my wife is now reading it. She's a nurse practitioner, and she's just eating it up. And I got a picture. I put it on my cell phone, and anybody I know who's going through it, I just send them that picture, say, you need to read this. So thanks for coming on, Bob.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve, and I'm delighted that your wife is reading the book. Anytime we can get someone in allopathic medicine to take a little look at the other side, you might say, we're delighted with that. And there's a lot of people seeking now exactly that. And we know that allopathic medicine, conventional medicine is necessary, and we love the people who do well with that, but we also know that, a lot of times it's not necessary. It does harm patients at times, and we like to go the natural way, whenever we can, because it's less caustic on the body and is generally proven to be more doable and more healable.
And we're going to cover a lot of that in today's show. We've got a little time with you, and I appreciate that. Bob happens to be a person who lives in my neighborhood. We're in the same cityscape. We're probably all about 25 to 30 minutes away from each other. And I discovered you through the Gals at the Flame. We had you on that show. And I thought, well, I'm going to bring Bob on because this show is about not being the prey, but being a lion. And that's in your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your financial health. And I thought, boy, if there's a need right now, having lost two friends to cancer just recently within the last couple of years in their 60s, having just met a gal who is struggling with cancer and having found out that she has been introduced to one of the clinics, and we'll talk about this a little later, that you mentioned in your book, and she finds that she's finding hope, but she's on death's doorbed. She is for 10 years has been suffering, and she's now going through protocol. So this is very important, and I think all of our listeners are going to gain a lot in knowledge from this. So I want to start out with the International Wellness and Research Center is a nonprofit organization envisioned as a multifaceted wellness organization that serves its constituents worldwide through various methodologies. And before we get in this, I know, Bob, you're going to tell me that there may be a sunset on this organization. So we're going to discuss that a little bit later. But I want to just touch some of the things here before we do. Basically, it's this: a no-nonsense quality education about true health and wellness, preventative measures to virtually disease-proof individuals, dissemination of healing regimens outside of traditional medicine, investigation, research, and scientific studies of known natural treatments, supplements, and protocols, research to discover new natural healing methods for sickness and disease, and clinical trials, if necessary, to bring non-drug, natural proven components to the wellness community. So let's begin with your own story, Bob. How long have you been doing this? What drove you to actually become someone who is out there seeking methodologies to help people find healing in a natural process?
Well, it goes back a long way, Steve. I'm 73 going on 74 years old now, still very active. And I was an athlete all my life and was blessed to be able to go through college on full ride basketball and baseball scholarships. Otherwise, coming from a poor family, I never would have been able to do that. And so through a various career of doing different things, I was in insurance when I was much younger. I was the director of a Boys Club of America. Ultimately, I got into the aerospace industry, and then my wife's antique and collectible industry. We built the largest antique mall on the West Coast, and then subsequently sold that. But I was always interested in health because after my sports career, I became a runner. So I never really left it and became a distance runner and ran marathons and other races. And I was always trying to figure out how I could be healthier, how I could run further, how I could run faster and do all of these things legally. And because some people weren't at that time nor are today. So that's what really drove me to study foods. In college, I studied all the ologies from biology, anatomy and physiology, kinesiology, and all of these things. So I have a degree in health and physical education. And that drove me to be healthy and to seek the methods that would allow me to maintain that or get even better. I was constantly on the search. So through the mid 70s, when all the supplements started to come out through what is known as network marketing companies, I wanted to look at the products because, they were not mainstream. They were not in drugstores or big box stores. They were different types of products. But it took a while for me to find something that would actually work for me. So a lot of them were just ways to make money early on. I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in what are the products like, always seeking to find something better. And we've carried that on through the AACI. We don't recommend anything that's not as close to perfect as we can get it. So I did that and finally began to find products coming out of that industry that were making a difference in people's lives. And I've kind of carried on with that through the decades. But decided to really study beginning with cancer a lot of years ago when my mom died of cancer, and then subsequently my dad died of cancer. My mom died within a week of diagnosis, and my dad took 16 years to die after his kidney was removed. Cancer moved on to the other one over the years, and he was on 25 pharmaceuticals a year before he died, and I'm sure that played a major part in it. So that really drove me. And then I founded the American Anti-Cancer Institute. And since we've kind of morphed into the International Wellness and Research Center, because we deal with all chronic illness now, whether it's diabetes or autoimmune diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, and still really specialize in cancer. So we're still the American Anti-Cancer Institute, but mostly the International Wellness and Research Center. And we've had people representing us all over the world. And I've traveled to many different countries to make that happen. But so that's the story, the really 30,000 foot story, I guess, the short one about where we came from. And I need to tell you that it kind of culminated, at least the first half of it, in not finding through all my study what I thought I would find about cancer. I found out that most of it was just a big lie. And so that drove me to find the truth. And that has been what we have been through the years, through the last 16 years with the American Anti-Cancer Institute, and seeking always the truth, no matter who it offended. Sadly, we don't try and offend people, but we need to tell people the truth. And we need to study the scientific basis and facts behind products, behind methodologies and protocols and all of these types of things, remedies, so to speak. Find out if they're true, find out how they work. Because obviously, we can't tell people that this heals cancer or that heals cancer. And no one actually should, because it's a matter of finding the formulation in life that heals the human immune system, because God gave us that, and it heals us if we allow it to and keep it healthy. So I can't tell anyone that vitamin C or graviola or anything else heals cancer, even though some people will say, well, that healed my cancer, not understanding that we need to deal with cancer epigenetically at the physiological level. And it needs to encompass holistically our entire being to be effective. So that's what we've been doing, and we've been doing it very effectively over those years. And I guess we could declare, after dealing with hundreds of thousands of people, and if we add in people who bought the book and who've listened to us online and Zooms and through all the speaking engagements I have had, maybe millions of people, we've been very successful.
Well, I want to say that so many good people I have admired have succumbed to cancer, and I kind of mentioned that earlier, over the years, be they friends or individuals, entertainers, sports celebrities, you name it. People that have done wonderful things and then succumb to cancer at a very young age. And when I mean young, 30, 40, 50, 60, kids in their below teens. And I came across your work probably after I came across Dr. Richardson's work, which was pioneer in Laetrile, and which is B17, and it's a derivative of apricot seeds. And what's interesting is I remember hearing about this years ago. Mm-hmm. I've always been like, I got involved with the network marketing back in the 80s. And one of the companies I was part of was called Light Force, and they had product line. Spirulina was the basis of that. And I really believed in the product, and I took it and did a lot of fasting using spirulina. Now I'm going to actually hook up and buy some more, do more fasting. But it got me thinking. I started reading. I started researching a lot of alternatives. And then even with my wife and I being married in late 80s, we would get videos. We'd get books. She would get people handed stuff to her. And we were always on the search. So when I came across Dr. Richardson's work, it was like, oh, that apricot seeds. Oh, there's strychnine in there, so we can't take that. That's what I heard, And then
Cyanide.
I did cyanide. Thank you, cyanide. And I went, okay. So then I was reading the book, and I recognized that God made the seed for a purpose, and that in that seed is cyanide, but there's also other chemicals, and they work conjunctively, so that when it goes into your body, the bad cells are attracted, killed off, and yet the rest of the body is protected. And I thought, what other kind of seeds? Oh, apple seeds, other kind of seeds that you chew. I've always eaten apples. I've eaten a core, whatever, as a kid. Never thought anything of it. And I thought, God talks about seeds in the Bible a lot. Maybe there's a little clue there. So that got me interested in that. And then I came across you when we interviewed you about a year and a half ago, and I got your book. So talk to us a little bit about the fact that I've found this. I'm applying this knowledge to my life. And yet I'm finding that people, that there is cures, and I want to scream, guys, you don't have to die. You don't have to die from cancer. I had an individual in my life that I knew, and he was with cancer, and I wrote him, hey, are you interested in anything that might help you along that's alternative to what you're doing already? Mm-hmm. No. It's in God's hands. I'm trusting this process. I'm great. 6 months later, he died.
Right.
And I have another friend who right now, she had to have surgery, and they literally went in and did some major surgery on her back, neck. She had crushed spine, all that kind of stuff. They reinforced it, and then they found a growth around it, so they removed it. But she switched over, and she's using, so she went through that. She's able to walk and everything now, but she's now working with my naturopathic clinic, and she's getting a whole barrage of various things, and she's feeling great, and it's working. But talk to us a little bit about people's inability to connect that there may be another method than what their doctor tells them.
All of us that are my age or your age, and even younger now, were raised in a conventional medicine society. And we can go all the way back to G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer, and get once again, the Laetrile story, which is apricot kernels once again, nitrilicides and all of this. And yes, and this leads us to John Richardson, and John Richardson Jr. now, who's still selling the apricot kernels.
Yep, met him.
When you go back into that book, I'm going to do this very briefly. You hear about the Carnegies and the Mellons and the Rockefellers and all these wealthy industrialists who basically formed the medical schools back in the early 1900s. And they did it based on the idea that they were going to be what we now call allopathic or conventional, using pharmaceuticals. They were going to use surgery. They were going to use radiation, which came around in the late 1800s, and then they were going to use chemicals, which now we know is chemotherapy and all other types of pharmaceuticals. And if you dare to not use those, in other words, they told the naturopathic schools, we're going to run you out of business. And, they were almost totally successful. And by not giving them any money, all the money went to the new universities and the new medical schools that they formed. And very few naturopathic schools were left when the smoke cleared. Fortunately, we still don't have a lot of them, but we have some of them now, one close to us in Pasteur University. But that's a society we were raised in.
Yes.
And, you did what the doctor told you to do because he was just slightly below God in knowledge and wisdom and understanding. And so that's what happened. That's how we were raised. When you were sick, you went to the doctor. And the doctor supposedly was the one who made you well, but he didn't make you well at all. Your own body healed you if given the right ingredients. But the doctor always got the credit. But to be fair, we had country doctors back then who knew what they were doing when they were putting oatmeal packs on your chest and doing other things naturally. But it evolved into behemoth, you might say, that I call kind of a evil triad of the drug companies, the FDA, and the medical association. The money just goes like that. It goes in a triangle or a circle, however you want to put it, and it is about money.
Yes.
Everyone should know that now. That's no secret. But that's what has taken over our society. And the results, if you look closely at it, and people will ask me after I tell them a protocol that will probably work well for them. Um, they'll say, and it's covered by insurance, right? And I say, no,
No.
it's, and if it was covered by insurance, I can tell you that people would flee conventional medicine as rapidly as they could, but they simply cannot afford to do it because of the insurance factor. That's why all of those work together. It's not covered by insurance. And so, but it is actually the method that saves more lives by far than anything conventional medicine does. And by saving lives, what do I mean? Are people going to live a year more than they would have with the chemo? Well, sure, they can. Can they live 10 years more? Yes. Can they live 20 years? A lot longer is what we find, but we have to be a little bit critical in saying that some people won't survive no matter what they do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're so far gone that it doesn't matter what you do because their body is ready to go.
Yeah, that's true. But some people won't tell you the truth either. And I understand that. I get it. But they'll take a protocol and they say, I'm going to do all of these things. And we say,
Oh,
great. And we find out after a couple months that they're still drinking their whiskey and smoking their cigarettes. And you can't take a little bit of the good stuff and think that that's going to overshadow anything bad that you do. People mistake that. On the other hand, there might be people that are completely vegetarian, completely vegan, eating organic foods, not taking any drugs whatsoever, not eating anything that is inherently bad for them. They're away from all of the meats that are saturated with antibiotics and hormones. They don't drink any soda pop. They don't drink milk. Milk is poison, by the way, but we're a society that doesn't know that. But at the same time, some of them still get cancer, and they will come to me and say, why me? I've done everything correctly. Well, you take that up with God at this point, because you can't do everything correctly. You can't walk out the door and be doing everything correctly because you're going to be bombarded with radiation and chemicals. And if you're not careful at home, you're bombarded with radiation and chemicals. We've got 5G on our phones now. I happen to have a couple biodots on the back that ameliorates the radiation. 5G is a killer. And so we have to be smart about what we do, but we have to have an understanding and be critically thinking people to know that we're really not in charge. We like to say we're the master of our own fates and the captains of our own souls, right? No, you're not. And you heard it from me, but we heard it from God first. So we need to understand how life works. And we don't really do that. And that includes our physical body. You mentioned as we came on, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of these things are important,
yes.
but we disregard so many of them. And we think by taking a pill the doctor gives us that magically we're going to get better. And I need to tell everyone right now, if that's how you're thinking, you're not correct. That's not how it works. So we've been trying to train up people in the truth about health and healing with the understanding that our Creator is also the great healer, and we need to take that in our confidence when we understand that no matter what you do, you're not going to heal yourself. Your body has the capability because God created it with its innate immune system that will move you in the right direction, but it's not a guarantee ever. But it is the best choice to treat your body and your epigenetic systems, your physiological functions correctly. That's what brings the strength to the immune system and has the ability to heal you no matter what you have.
Well, I love what you're saying, Bob. I wanted to quote a little something that Dr. Robert Mendelsohn, MD, who Confessions of a Medical Heretic said back in '79. He says, doctors simply don't believe in non-drug therapies. For one thing, very few of them know how to treat without drugs, so they don't believe it. If you have a high blood pressure, your doctor will get you on a drug. And it's interesting because my wife does certain things. She's in charge of charting and all this kind of stuff. And she was just saying last night that, it's amazing how the protocols right in the electronic management system says put them on a statin, put them on a statin, put them on a statin. She says, you know, what's going on is you're suppressing your body from naturally producing what you need, because, you know, an egg has three parts: has a shell, has a yolk, and has a white. And all three of them, the white and the yolk, work together because in synergistic, like we were talking about the seed earlier, it actually has the right amount of cholesterol that your body needs. And when you start removing one part or another, or you know, all this about cholesterol, and there's so much research now, because I'm all about finding truth too. But this idea that put people on a drug to ameliorate the symptoms, but not the underlying core issue. And I want to talk about this a little bit. In the book, Killing Cancer, Not People, there was a section in there that different cancer specialists, natural healing specialists, one of them pointed out that cancer, and he made a statement, he said, cancer is 100% a mind thing. And that was his statement. And I've got another book over here about mind-body connections. And Dr. Sarno, and he was back in the 90s and earlier, he points out that a lot of pain and ultimately a lot of other things are related to undealt with emotional things, such as rage and anger, resentment, just hatred, bitterness, the very things that the Bible say are of the flesh and of the darkness. And it said, and he points out that when you get rid of these things, when you identify what's causing that and you identify it and release it, that all of a sudden your pain goes away. But people will spend thousands of dollars, go through multiple operations to cure a pain, and they still get it back, or it might show up in another part of their body. And I'm like, wow. I think a lot of people in this world that we live in, Bob, and throughout history, but probably more so in the last 50 to 100 years, have been bombarded with so much messaging and so much from the outside that has really caused a caving in of the core of family units, the destruction, the abuse that's going on, the neglect, the all that goes with that. And all these individuals grow up and they're now adults, and they're carrying all this load of pain and anger. And I see, I mean, on a world scale right now, we see one group destroying another group, and they're doing it because they think they have the right to do that, because they're carrying all this undealt with morass of evil inside them that they have yet to release. And you and I know, Bob, that we can go to the cross. But I know people who don't come from our belief system who still understand that, get in touch, get rid of this stuff, call it psychic poison, and they find relief. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about that, what you've discovered.
Well, you hit it on the head when you said, well, people are going to do what they want to do. And we find that. And, you know, I don't want to go real deep into my faith right now. I like to do that every opportunity I can, but we're not going to do that right now. But I know that people go their own way anymore. Burger King says you can have it your way, you know, and people adopt that. And as I mentioned earlier, people want the pill to heal. They don't want to go through a program, a protocol, or something that will be their best chance and their best choice to heal them, because we want things instantly. I give someone a protocol and they'll say, oh, okay, I'll do it. But how long do I have to do it for? And I'll go, pretty much for the rest of your life. They're not going to do it because they don't want to give up their meat and potatoes. They don't want to give up their beer and wine. They don't want to give up the things that are harming them in the first place. And foods is primarily where all of that begins. And for some reason, we don't seem to understand that at all. And we're emotionally bankrupted anymore. We're looking at, remember we used to call the television the boob tube, you
Boob
know?
tube.
Yeah. And because we're ingrained in that. And when we're thinking about medical things, we see all the drug ads on TV and it says, ask your doctor about Lipitor, ask your doctor about Ozempic. You know, all of these different drugs.
I got my patch right here. I just got my you know what, and you're like, what?
Yeah. I
You're
tell people, if you want to shorten your lives, and it's up to you, get vaccinations, get all you want. Go
yeah.
ahead and go for that. Take all the drugs that you want, because once you take one drug, and I'm not telling people in certain instances that they shouldn't take pharmaceuticals, because there are times when they will help them
Yep.
get through a certain period of time. So I can't say no. But I told you my dad was on 25. We got him down to 12 a year before he died. He wouldn't go lower, and his doctor wouldn't let him go lower. Think about it. He was on 3 drugs for constipation alone. You need those because you're so full of opioids and other things that you're all stopped up all the time.
Your body. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. So our society today is tuned in to medicine, even though you watch those commercials on TV and they're required by law to give you all the side effects at 100 miles an hour or listed below. And one of the side effects on most of those drugs is death. And another one of the side effects, if you're taking one for that is for some specific thing, then one of the side effects is exactly that same thing.
That's
And
right.
do they think we're stupid? And the answer is yes,
Yes.
they do. And what they are hoping you will do is go to the doctor. And the doctor will say, oh, yeah, that's an approved drug. You can certainly use that one, because that's whenever it's approved by the FDA, the doctors don't necessarily have to read up on it, although they should. But they are legitimately able then, once it's approved, no matter what others think about it, to basically prescribe it to the patient. So, you know, when we look at it and we look at the physical, we look at the spiritual, we look at the emotional, we look at the mental, just think about that. We are lost in all of those categories in our country, and the other countries are following us now. They are too.
Yes, they are too.
We get tons of people from Southeast Asia who have cancer. They have it everywhere. They have it everywhere. Why? Because they have an Americanized lifestyle now.
Yes.
They eat all the junk, and they drink all the junk. We're just consumed by GMOs now, dyes, and all kinds of things in our diet that are harming us every single day. And we don't seem to realize it because they taste good. And or let's just say our palates have changed. It used to be when I was a kid, we'd eat in a carrot. It tasted good. Kids don't eat carrots today unless their parents have raised them in that direction. That's very few. Kids eat candy bars. They eat French fries. They eat big gulps that are 64 ounces.
It used to be
acidify their bodies.
Yeah, I get on my oldest son about that. I when you look at westernized lifestyle being exported all over the world, you realize that is a for-profit purpose.
Absolutely.
That the companies that manufacture this stuff aren't going to make profits when somebody is in a non-westernized country still living the old way of life or eating the old way of life, eating a natural way of life, making their own foods and stuff. There's a show now on Netflix where a guy goes around and he's looking at centurions they're living over 100 years old, and he looks at what their lifestyle is and what they're eating, which is, there's some positive stuff out there. Mm-hmm. And you go, okay, look at this. But westernized medicine, westernized political views, westernized everything gains money for the westernized corporations, the international corporations. It could care less about you and I. It goes back, like you said, to Carnegie, Standard Oil barons. the whole bit. By the way, they very many of those people were also eugenicists.
Hmm.
They saw anybody that wasn't white-skinned of that echelon as lesser than, and henceforth, why so many drug protocols or whatever they call research is done offshore in other countries, and when the children die or the people die under it, they kind of whitewash that because it wasn't here in the United States. So I want to shift gears for a moment. It seems to me that back in the 80s there became an awareness of what you're talking about, Bob,
Hmm.
of the natural way of doing things, the supplement things, and people were moving forward. I was watching a show with my wife. We've discovered on YouTube an old one out of the 70s called Petrocelli. He's a lawyer, and he's out there helping people out. One of the
Hmm.
episodes, there was a gal who the original owner, founder of a clinic, alternative clinic, had passed away, and this other gal, this nurse or whoever it was taking it over, and she got in some hot water. Anyways, he got her out of it, and at the end he goes, you know, whatever you're doing over there is saving lives and helping people out, and I'm going to give my money to help you out. You don't have to pay me, and we're going to support you. And I went, that's a very powerful nod to, and my wife said, was that the Richardson's clinic? But there
No, it
were,
wasn't.
it wasn't, but I'm just saying there was some of that being brought into popular media. And then in
Yes.
the 80s, the talk show hosts, it used to be they would have somebody come on like a Dr. Richardson or Dr. Sarno or this Mendelsohn. He was a big guy. He had columns in newspapers and everything. Now it seems like we have to go to these kind of platforms where we're doing it in alternative places. What do you think it crested? And then do you think something happened that stopped that? Because we're not, now it's back to movies about plagues and got to get this and got to get that. You're older. You're 10 years older than me. You grew up watching this stuff and being part of it. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I saw Laetrile basically in the 70s come into our view, and it was people were flocking to it, and they were using it in the United States until the FDA got a hold of it. And of course, they did the studies at Sloan Kettering too, and actually proved it did what they said it would do, but they didn't expect that. And so their publicist at that time, very famous guy who became even more famous, uh, had to come out and they said, "Don't you tell we're hiding this, we're putting it away. No one is going to know this." And this is a big story. Anyone can find this. And he just decided, I can't do it. I have to tell people the truth. And of course, he was fired immediately. He's lucky he's still alive, I'm sure. But so the FDA basically ran Laetrile out of the country. And so all the people were headed to Mexico to get the Laetrile because chemo and radiation and anything else they had for cancer back in the 70s was not working. Any of the drug, people were just guinea pigs, and people don't understand that they still are today. You'll go and get a diagnosis, and the doctor will say, "I've got bad news and good news. The bad news is you have cancer. Doesn't look good, but the good news is that we've got a good form of chemotherapy. It's going to help. And if it doesn't, the better news is we've got one behind that and one behind that." And I'm saying that's all bad news, folks. You need to understand because chemotherapy cannot kill cancer stem cells. And radiation can't kill cancer stem cells. Those are the mother cells. Those are the ones that are going to metastasize your cancer. And I am telling you, yes, that the main form of cancer treatment in the world today does not cure cancer, nor does it have an ability to. And it actually spreads cancer because it makes those cancer stem cells more virile.
More
And
virile.
people will it does kill some of the daughter cells, so it has a tendency to shrink tumors. And many people have been told they're cancer free, only to die within 6 months or a year because it set up shop somewhere else and it was more virile than ever. So I think it started more in the 70s. And of course, Richardson's clinic, even though he healed his 50, 62 patients, I don't know what the number was. All of them were stage 4. All of them were supposed to die. That's the only reason he got them. And they had a test. He healed all of them. And how many years ago was that? A lot. And many of them are still alive today. And so there are things out there that work. But to answer your question, a good friend of mine, I don't even know if I should mention her name. She had a clinic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, dealing with cancer patients. She used Laetrile intravenously. She used DMSO intravenously. I went out there several times and talked to 6 gals in their big chairs undergoing intravenous therapy with these things. And DMSO is very pungent, and so you could smell it on their breaths. But all of these women were undergoing these types of therapies, and they were being healed. And so she was attacked. Her clinic was invaded by armed government. She called them the Gestapo. They were all in the black gear. They beat up one of her people, and basically they didn't shut her down, but they raided her bank account an hour before, so she had no dollars to continue. Then ultimately they ran her out of the country. And this still happens today. And many people have heard what's gone on with some of the other things like GC MAF and the doctors who have worked with that, and the mysterious disappearance and deaths of over 80 doctors now in the last probably 3 years.
Wow, 80.
One doctor was out fly fishing, and they found his body floating in the river. And of course, the medical autopsy said that he died of a self-inflicted wound. Tell me, who's out fly fishing in the river and shoots himself in the chest with a shotgun? No one does that. And so I'm not accusing anyone at this point. I'm just telling people, take this seriously. And that's why we have to take it seriously. That's why we don't manufacture and sell products. We recommend products manufactured by others that are the best in the world. I told you that earlier. That's all we do. But we don't say that anything heals anything. We can't.
No.
The day that we do that, our lives are in danger too, and everyone's is. And so there's been a crackdown. You're right. And the crackdown is we need to put these people out of business. And why? Because they're taking money from our wallets. That's what's happening, because people were flocking to natural therapies and protocols because they worked.
They work.
And you can't have that in a country or in a world now that relies on allopathy for its very existence. I mean, every economy would collapse if there was a cure for cancer. They would collapse. And people.
Oh, you mean like if there was a cure for wars, the economy would collapse?
There's another thing.
Industrial, military, medical complex probably hires 50 million people in the United States alone. If you look at those two branches, if we say no more, we're not supporting any other, we're not building any more armaments, we're shrinking our military, and 2, we are going to allow full, holistic, natural methodologies be applied, you probably have 50 million people out of work.
No doubt.
And that's why the government's saying, nope, the corporation is saying, nope. And so then it comes down to you and I, Bob, to be smart and to be wise and say, I can't change the world, but I can help and introduce this message to those who want to hear it and show them where there is a place to find healing.
Yeah. Yeah, and we probably got 50 million people out of work today because they won't work anymore because, it's either the government dole or living parents or whatever. Again, I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, but we're a society, once again, that just doesn't want to work. And what does the word say? If you don't work, you shall not eat. But that doesn't mean anything, sadly, to most Americans today.
No, we could get off on that tangent very easily. I want to talk about a little bit about the brainwashing that takes place in our medical institutions, and that I understand. My naturopath told me this several years ago, that the last of the drug journals, medical journals, had been bought by one of the pharmaceutical entities. And he said there's not any quote journal of medicine, of research that isn't owned now by a pharmaceutical company.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like Consumer Report being owned by General Motors, and now all the time they'll tell you what, all the other ones, but General Motors is going to be the one that's brought to the forefront on a consistent basis as being the answer for your car needs.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that, and then also you said it earlier, the input of the even the way they train. My wife is a nurse practitioner, and they got a little different. They got more of a hands-on. They come from a different mindset already than a MD does. They were more a holistic approach in the first place. So my wife, I think, has always been more open to that because her training. Hey, we need to look at all the person, but the way the system's built right now is people have 5 minutes with their doctor or practitioner, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So they don't even get. So talk to us about how that might be a.
Yeah, and osteopaths too have more hands-on training.
Yes. Yep.
As well. But I had an interesting thing about 5 or 6 years ago. I was doing an event in the Tri-Cities. People outside of Washington probably won't know where that is, but that's the Pasco, Kennewick, Richland, 3 areas where the Hanford nuclear facilities are too in southeastern Washington. I was doing a big event there, and we had a lot of people. And it just so happens that I didn't know it, but occasionally we have a bunch of doctors that come to watch our events as well. So I was speaking, and unbeknownst to me, we had a pediatrician in the back of the hall there where we were doing it, and I made a remark, and I had verified it because I talked to doctors all of the time, and there was a rumor out there. It wasn't really a rumor. It had been verified many times that doctors were getting checks, $10,000 and more, if they will just recommend this specific drug, because they're always visited by the representatives from the pharmaceutical companies. All you got to do is, it's already approved by the FDA. All you got to do is start writing scripts for it. Here's 10 grand. And so I reiterated that story. And she jumped up and she said, I'm a pediatrician, and that's not true. That's flat not true. I've never been offered money. And well, I said, well, that doesn't make it not true. But she was adamant about that. But the fact is that doctors have told me, oh, yes, that's true. So who are you going to believe? The pediatrician who probably has not been offered that, maybe because she's a pediatrician, I don't know. But the fact is that there is definite control there, and it's paid control, and it still happens. And I heard another thing, and I haven't verified this, but I'm pretty sure that it's true, that the reps for the pharmaceutical companies they were told this 5 or 6 years ago as well, that we want every adult to start with on at least 5 drugs, and it's your job to go out and make that happen. And we see it. You get to be my age, and you go to the doctor, and what drug you on? Oh, I don't take drugs. They said, no, I don't mean fentanyl or marijuana or anything. What kind of pharmaceuticals do you take? And I said, I don't take pharmaceuticals. And he said, it's not possible. You can't be your age and not take them.
I know.
Yeah. And I said, well, actually you can. But there are some people who are very, very healthy, but are, required because they've got AFib or they've got something to control their rate. And I get that. And so, anyway, I digress a little bit here from your original question, but we know who has the power in this country and in this world today. And it continues to grow. What can we do about it? Well, that's something we're going to talk about before we're done here, too.
Oh, yes, I'm going to be covering that. We're going to be talking about what people can do. I think, folks, if you just look at the last 3 years of our beginning in 2020 and the power to convince people and to shut down things, and you look at who was behind all that, you realize that this is not about your health. This is not about health. It is multiplest. There's a multiplicity of reasons, and but it's certainly not about good health. It is not about good health. Bob, I want to talk a little bit about turn a corner and talk about some of the organizations, your organization's stated goal. It says a no-nonsense quality education about true health and wellness. Talk to me about this. How do you go about educating people? And I know you've talked about how, hey, if you do these protocols and everything, but I know you've had success. I know there are people who've gone through, who stuck with it, are doing great. So talk to us about your educational process of helping people out.
Well, could you pick up my book again? You have it right by you there.
Yes, hold on. I've got 2 or 3 books.
Okay, folks, that's where you start right there. And it's the book was written by me, God inspired, of course. And it's written more like a novel. How many people want to pick up a big, thick book on cancer? And actually, that's not totally on cancer. That's about all chronic illness. When you think about it, it just happens to have cancer in the title. But first, you need to make them understand the state of the state or the state of the world. And I cover that in there, and I cover what works and what doesn't work. But we need to educate people in a way that they can understand it, in a way that they will involve themselves in it. And that's what the book was for. It's got humor in it. It's not a book of facts and figures, because people aren't going to read that. And so they're not going to be helped by it. I have had many people tell me, and there's a quote in there that says this by somebody that we feel is pretty important in the cancer industry. Say it's the best book on cancer that I've ever read. And he says, I've written 3 books. It's better than anything I've ever done or anything I've ever read. Now, I don't know if it is or not. What I do know is it's been terrifically received by the world. And we've sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies, including ebooks now, the books in Chinese, the books in Spanish. We've just finished that, the books in the Indonesian language. And we've never advertised it, ever.
Wow.
And so it's been word of mouth. So it must be doing some people a lot of good, and it does. So the education starts with understanding what is cancer, because your doctor can't tell you. The doctor will say, these cells go sideways and this happens, and they start multiplying out of control, and he'll talk to you for 2 or 3 minutes, and he said, really, we don't know. That's not the guy I want to go to help me. I want to tell you where it comes from. And we do in the book. We tell you where it comes from, why you can have it or not have it. And we're very fair and very truthful about that, so people get it. And then we tell them what they can do about it through the different protocols. We give them quotes from famous doctors like Mendelsohn and many others. I think I've quoted him in the book about what doctors themselves say about how cancer is treated today, and why it's failing us miserably. So we want people to have an education. And I tell people, go read that book. You want to know more about cancer than your doctor does? And they'll go, what? And I said, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Your doctor has a bag, as it were, to carry around that has, if you have cancer, he's got 3 things in it. What does he have? He's got radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. And I've got a whole basket and a whole bucket of things to choose from.
You got a truckload. You have a truckload in here. Folks, I'm telling you that if you just apply what you feel and deem is important to your life, and you apply that protocols in preventative, you're going to feel healthier all over. Your body is going to be healthier. And you are going to live a happier, more productive, energetic life if you just take in some of what he's saying. But if you've got diagnosis with cancer, then you need to go 100% protocols, because your body is an extreme point of need. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, you got to do what the protocols, and go ahead.
Well, I tell people you need to stop it first. from growing anymore. And then you go about the process of reversing
There
it.
you go.
But what if you just stop it? Someone comes to me and said, "Doctor says I've got stage 4 cancer, but I feel okay now. I'm able to do basically everything." And I said, "So you're telling me that if we can stop your cancer from growing anymore, you could still live with it?" They go, "Absolutely." I said, "Well, that's what we need to do first. I've got stage 4 cancer. I've had it for 20 years. How's that possible? I still have it. And the reason is the lifestyle. The
Yep.
reason is doing the things that keep it from growing. I don't know that sometime in my life it might overtake me or it might be something else. But I'm going out to golf another 18 holes. I'm 73 going on 74 years old. So what I want is a quality of life.
Yep.
We all want quantity, but what is quantity without quality?
Yes.
People don't want to be laying in a bed for their last 20 years of their life. They want quality of life, and that's what I want. So I'm working on that. That's what I work on. And so we all have, I think, basically the ability to do it, except when someone has been so overtreated or let the cancer go too far that their immune system has no ability to respond any longer. And then there's nothing that anyone can really do for them. And we have to confess that. But in most cases, there's something you can do. There's something you can do, even if you're very diseased at this point, maybe to live another year with quality of life, where the doctors have given you 90 days. We find that the people the doctors give 90 days usually die in less in less time than that, if they don't do something to ameliorate that. And we find people who've been given 90 days that come to us, and they're living for years and years and years afterwards. It does make a difference, folks, if you're willing to invest yourself in your own health. I say you don't have to fire your doctor, but try being your own doctor when we're talking about natural things, and you can do a great thing for yourself. Really, you can.
Well, and I'm a big proponent to trying to get quality over quantity when it comes to my food, or if I'm going to indulge in a drink or something, I'm going to go as pure as possible. I don't want to have something that's full of garbage. But I do that with what I put in, my mentally and emotionally and spiritually. I'm trying to look for the nuggets of truth. I'm looking for wisdom. I'm looking for the pure things. And I yeah, we all have entertainment stuff, but it is very interesting that when he, in this book, if I remember right, he talks about that if you go to your doctor and your doctor says, "Well, you got 6 months," then that doctor has already set you up on a death spiral.
Yeah. He's condemned you to death.
He's condemned you to death, and if you believe it, then you are believing him. But if your doctor says, we've got these 3 protocols, we're not sure how it's going to work out, but you know what? Shh. Don't say anything, but there are other methodologies out there, and I can't tell you what, but I might want to suggest you start, check this book out. And you know what? Cancer is not a death sentence. You might be able to live. Now, unfortunately, I know of people who went in the hospital, they got opened up, and they died 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
Kidney cancer or liver cancer tends to be. And I'm thinking, they didn't even know that they had that time bomb in them. And now we're hearing this whole idea of turbo cancer and stuff. I'm like, well, I know people who had, quote, turbo cancer years ago by just going in and finding out that they had been having a little ache and pain for a couple months or whatever. They go in and they get opened up. And I know 2 people. I know one personally, and I know another person whose mother just went in. Oh, actually, 3 people. One was 23, but unfortunately, he died of liver cancer. Unfortunately, he was very grossly overweight, and he wasn't taking care of himself. Good news, he knew the Lord, but he didn't take care of himself. And he had been complaining when I met him, and then like about a year later, or 8 months, whatever. Anyway, he ended up going in, boom, he dead. a friend of mine who's been dealing with diabetes, again, not in good shape, went in just 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and they opened him up, said, oh, and he died like that. And then another individual who, very similar, the mother of our friend. So Bob talked about that some of this stuff is very quick.
Yeah.
In others, in others, it can linger for years. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I'll encourage everyone to get the book and then go to chapter 11 that's entitled Synthetic Visualization. And that is going to tell you a little bit more about what I think, about what you think when the doctor gives you that death sentence or gives you 6 months or 9 months to live. I've been given that some time ago, actually. And you have to seize the moment, because we're a people that we talked about before, that believe our doctors.
Yeah.
And so if our doctor says you're going to die in 3 months, we proceed to get our affairs in order and follow that prescription that he just gave you and die in 3 months or less. When we don't have to do that, it's the people that are strong, the people that challenge, and the people that say, I'm not going to do that. I feel okay. I think I can survive this. Now, what do I have to do? And then you go about the business of getting yourself well. That's not a guarantee that you're going to live 20 or 30 more years, but it usually ends up that you do way better, way better. So I say to people, take charge. Take charge of your life, and you have the ability to do better. And inherently, we all know that. Inherently, if we're eating the wrong stuff, and by the way, folks, there's no such thing as junk food. There's junk and there's food.
Yeah.
Make sure you can delineate that. But if we go about doing things that we know we need to do, and we know if I've got a crappy diet, I know it, and I know I need to do something about it. Now, does it take a cancer diagnosis to get me rolling on that? Well, for many people it would, but it shouldn't. If people have bad lifestyles, and whatever it might be, food, drink, smoking, I'm feeling so bad about the people that are smoking marijuana so much now. They're destroying their brains because the THC is so much higher today than it was back in the 60s when I was at Haight-Ashbury for a brief period of time. But people don't know what it's doing to them. It's going to destroy their hearts and their brains. And so we need to change our lifestyles, but we're the only ones that can do it. The doctors aren't going to make them do it because this is sick care. It's not health care. True health care is you putting a stake in the ground and saying, I'm going to help myself because no one else is going to help me. So that's what we need to do as a country and a world. And it doesn't mean you can't have a chocolate shake every once in a while, or you can't go out to eat once in a while. What it means is you adopt a lifestyle that is based in doing good things and getting good results. We know what that is inherently. We know, and we have to embrace that.
And what's interesting is my middle son got really into. My wife and I have been working towards, and we're now really. She's got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm like, well, dang, 30 years worth of flu shots. I think there might be a reason that you've got this now. So she's working with our naturopath, and she completely changed her diet. She's using these really high quality supplements, and it's really made a huge difference. Go ahead.
One thing with that is people are toxic, and we already know that.
Yep.
If you lived as long as I have, and you haven't done it down to the cellular level detox, you are toxic, and your liver is overindulged right now. We have a methodology, chapter 9 of the book, PIOH, P-I-O-H, precision intestinal oxidative hydrotoning, couple places in the United States. It's a one-of-a-kind treatment, and if you want to detox your body to the cellular level, this is what we need to do. And many people can't get well if they don't do this.
So it says chapter 9, right?
Isn't it chapter 9 that says PIOH?
I will take a look. Let me see.
I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yes, it's chapter 9, PIOH, the ultimate therapy is what it's entitled.
Okay.
And there's one guy in the world, he's trained a guy or two now that do this, and it would be worth your while. Because we see people on our protocols, they get better and better and better, and then they stop.
They hit a
They
hit a
get
wall,
better.
don't they?
They do because their bodies are so toxic. So whether you're doing chelation or finding other ways to do detoxification, you need to detox. I drink the Kangen water. That helps me to detox too. There are several ways to do it, but the best way in the world is through this pile we explain in chapter 9. And if you have any questions about that or want to contact for that or anything that we recommend on our website, and we've got some pretty fantastic stuff, you just get a hold of me and I'll let you know.
And you just go info at what is the
AmericanACI.org.
there you go, and I'll put that in the link. But Bob, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I was watching. I know that we one of these gals that I met recently, who's going through her treatment and has been 10 years with the AMA style.
Mm-hmm.
She
Mm-hmm.
went to Hope for Cancer down in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And now her husband's like singing praises, and he's out there, and he was a paramedic for many years, and then he finally had to go through this to have his mind retrained, and it's helping her. I mean, they do, and he said what's interesting about that is they take and they treat you as a holistic person. You go in there, you're pampered, you're treated, you pray, you meditate, you remove. You are just gone through, and it's a whole regime that they go through, and then they come home and they follow through with the same kind of things that they learn,
Yes.
and they can go back and do it. That's one of the ones I know of. And then I was watching it's on YouTube. Her name is Dr. Barbara O'Neill, and she I think she's in South America South Africa. And she was demonstrating, this was a video, she was demonstrating this young man laying on the bed, the medical bed, whatever, and she was putting wraps of hot towels soaked in baking soda, wrapping them up, putting bags over them, like big Glad bags, completely wrapped them except for his head, engulfed him with wool blankets, and they do this 2 to 3 or 4 times a week. Now they got a barometric chamber that they're using as well, and then they use the greens and other protocols.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, so I know there was an individual, I watched a video about a guy who injects baking soda into the port that you would normally do the chemo.
Actually, he doesn't do it that way, and he probably should, because you give IVs in veins, and Dr. Tullio Simoncini is the Italian baking soda doctor you're talking about. But the reason that the feds were chasing him around the world was because he was injecting in arteries leading to where the cancer feeds, is what he was doing. Now, he may be doing it in veins now. I don't know, because the other was so controversial. It's hard to do that. Your arteries are your big vessels pumping blood out, so there's way more pressure, and it's way more fragile. That's why they don't inject things into arteries. So, but maybe he's doing it that way. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Well, and I had some issues with one toe with fungus, and I started packing it with baking soda. And within like a month, it just killed everything off. Now I'm in process of using tea tree oil, and it's growing back normal. And it's a process. It takes long time because that's a nasty thing, but it kills fungus.
Yes.
And then we just found out that if you have mold in your house, use hydrogen peroxide. Don't use bleach, because bleach actually ignites the spores and makes them spread, whereas the hydrogen peroxide kills them. And I went, oh, my goodness. I mean, this is just a brand new thing I just learned. And so this is a common under your sink, in your shelf products that do amazing things, Bob. And we're not told about this stuff. Now, drinking it doesn't, because your body just neutralizes it. It's so these are just 2 things that I just recently found out about, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that can be done intravenously now. The doctor I talked about, Tullio Simoncini, his main thing is cancer is a fungus. And so
Yes.
that's why he treats it with baking soda. And you can certainly do that. And there's other things, the H2O2, which is your hydrogen peroxide. You have to be careful because a lot of times they'll recommend you use a food grade, which is like 30 to 35%, whereas what you're going to use at home is only like 3%. That you can
Oh,
use that very easily, and that will help you as well. But if you're using food grade, you have to be very careful with it.
yeah.
But
No, it's whatever
yeah,
we have, and it's just for spraying in on the mold. I haven't
yeah,
taken any of it, but um, yeah, yeah. Okay, so mistletoe is another one where I know of somebody that's going through that treatment where they're being intravenously the mistletoe, and there's dozens. What I'm finding, Bob, is there's dozens and dozens and dozens of ways of attacking it. There's not just one way, and it even depends on the type. But
yeah.
and you were saying that earlier on in the show is that you got to find out what works for you,
Mhm.
and that all these different individuals are practicing. Some of them local. I mean, I got a local guy that's doing this, but they have to do it on the QT. They have to do it on the down low. And you have
And
to
we
go in there and be willing to pay cash. I pay cash, quite frankly, when I go get my health care because I'm going to a naturopath, I'm going to my chiropractor, I'm going to whatever. I don't want to, Anyway, when I break something, I go to a allopath.
You know, we've got even more new things, and some of these you might find on our website now. We've got terahertz blowers, and terahertz has been shown to kill cancer cells. It looks kind of like this terahertz blower, where you just put it on a spot and you turn it on.
Oh, is that a light?
Yeah, it's a light because it's terahertz frequency light, and it'll penetrate to 8 to 12 inches into your body. So you can utilize something like that. We've got plant DNA now in the form of drops that you would just put in your mouth, come on a blister pack. We got probably 13 different types of these that are plant DNA, and they work almost the same way as human DNA in your body for nutrients. We've got a new form of a specialized mushroom that I'm not going to mention any more about it, but it's taken at a very early form, not when it's just ultimately harvested, proprietary extraction, but it's just showing amazing things for people with cancer. And so, again, I'm not saying it heals anything. I can't say that, but I can say let's do our best and find things that can't hurt us, but have a great opportunity to help us and strengthen our epigenetic systems. In other words, our physiological functions and restore them. If I restore all my physiological functions, I'm not going to have autoimmune disease. I'm not going to have diabetes. I'm not going to have hormonal problems. Even when I get older, ladies, you should be aware of that, and men as well. As all men, if you live to be 100 and you die of old age and they do an autopsy on you, they're going to find you had prostate cancer. It's going to happen. But it didn't bother you throughout your life. And so that's what the book is trying to do, is educate people about some of the hard things, but some of the real simple things, like you said earlier, that are kept from them.
Yes.
Yeah. They're kept from being publicized because no one wants to be thrown in jail like Jason Vale was. He healed himself because the doctors couldn't heal him of his cancer, and he was dying. And so he got the apricot kernels. And guess what? He healed himself and with apricot kernels.
Yep.
And he was so excited that he went around the nation selling apricot kernels. And the FDA said, "You can't do that. You can't tell people they heal cancer." And he said, "Well, they healed me. It's the only thing I used." And they said, "You can't do that." He kept doing it. They warned him again. He kept doing it. They threw him in prison for 5 years for selling apricot kernels. It's just incredible. So we need to be careful about what we say.
Yep.
It's really not responsible either to say this one thing is going to cure your cancer. It's not responsible because it takes, like you said earlier, that holistic approach that Dr. Tony Jimenez uses at Hope for Cancer and many other good doctors utilize.
I'm thinking about the fact that there are methodologies. I've got a friend of mine gave me the book. I didn't bring it because it's falling apart, but it's like 1917 or 1919 called Videology, and it was a it was one of these books, and it's all about ways to heal yourself. The first thing you open up, and it says sunshine, the role of sunshine.
Yes.
And if you can't get sunshine outside, then here's how you build a room where you get the mirror, the sunshine comes in. You use a mirror. You sit in the center with naked on a chair, and you get that sunshine in on you. And we're talking 1917, and they understood. Now, maybe they didn't understand the vitamin D and all the other connections, but the idea of getting, it's like, why do we get colds and flus, quote, quote, in the fall and winter months? Is because we're not outside and we do not get that sunshine. We're not getting the invigorating rays that not only give you vitamin D, but they go into your eyes and they convert things in your body. There's a healing property to the sun. And when you don't get enough, your body depreciates. And then what do we end up doing? We make up for it because you're craving it by eating the wrong kind of foods. We drink way more coffee than we should. We drink more alcohol than we should. We're eating more sweets and carbohydrates to try to give us that feel that we would normally get if we were walking outside in the summer. Am I getting that right?
Well said. Well said. And if you can't, use a tanning bed. I mean, they've almost been outlawed, but they're not bad for you as long as you don't overdo it. You want the UVB rays is what you want. Or go get some D3K2, but get it from a good source, because this is another thing that the pharmaceutical companies have gotten a hold of. And they've got rancid fish oil, and they've got lanolin, which is sheep's wool that they make it from. So we need good sources. And if you don't want the flu, get D3K2 or get zinc, but get zinc in a good form. Here's another good form, 100% absorbable at the cellular level. We don't know of anything else that is, but we've got a line of products that we get through someone who all of them are 100% absorbable at the cellular level. People need magnesium. They don't get it, or it's just running around in their plasma, in their blood, and it doesn't get to the cells. It's no good for you, folks, if it doesn't get to your cells. If your body can't utilize it, the same with calcium. You need D3, you need K2, utilize the calcium in your body. You need potassium for your heart. You need magnesium for your heart, especially those people out there that have AFib or have heart anomalies. You need magnesium, but you need a good form of it.
Yeah, that's very important. I know my naturopath, I went in there and I had said, I'm on a small dose of anti-anxiety, and he said, well, Steve, maybe there's some other ways of dealing with that. I'm like, okay, sure, what? And then I came in there for another thing, and he says, Steve, why don't you bring in your vitamins? So I brought in my vitamins, all my stuff from the store, and he goes, junk, 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 junk. He says, Steve, how about if you do what I've got? I've got some stuff here in the clinic, and it's a high quality. You have to order it. You have to even use a code. An ADK and another one that's a B complex. And I'm telling you what, within 3 months I was off my meds, and I've never had a problem since. And I was like, what? I thought I was taking the right doses, but the stuff from the store was so junky that it wasn't absorbing. Now I take these two, and I'm going to look into your products, because it sounds like I can get the same thing with the zinc and the other things to augment it. But folks, if you don't get the correct product, and just because you get it through a network marketing doesn't even mean it's good. That's why proper formulations make a huge difference, because they don't absorb depending on what they're using.
Yeah, we have on our site, we have magnesium and minerals. And these are two of the most important things you can put in your body right now. And we have seen people who had problems like you. They were on anti-anxiety drugs. They're on other kinds of meds. They just felt drawn out. They've got no energy. The greatest form of magnesium in the world is right here. And you'll find this on our site. When you click on this, it'll take you to the site where you can acquire the product, but it'll also get you the Minerals, same thing. The zinc, the potassium, the calcium, anything you want that's 100% absorbable at the cellular level. Tell me, why would you waste your money on anything else? I don't know why you would. And you start with 16-ounce bottle, you start with like only a quarter to a half a teaspoon a day. Lasts a long time. Why waste your money on things that don't work? Don't buy any vitamins from Safeway or from any of the
Yeah,
big box stores or most of the drug stores because they're
yeah,
made by pharmaceutical companies.
they are. And I wasn't even planning on having you share that, but that is really good stuff, and I'm going to be definitely looking into it. And I know that you said that before the show that you're at a point. You're 73. You've done a lot of work on your helping people out the world over. You've traveled, and you've discovered that all your volunteer workers and stuff, they've moved on to other things. And I have seen this too. There is someone like yourself is inspired and you're driven and you get other people around you, and then it runs its course. It's not like what you're doing, Bob, isn't needed. It's needed more today than ever before. But
Mhm.
you are going to be pulling back from what you've been doing. Does that mean that your website is going away, or is it going to be there, but it's just going to be a lot less interaction with you? How does that going to work?
Well, it's likely that the website will remain up for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 3 months, until we decide the speed at which we are going to give up the 501c3 and basically do a shutdown. But I'll still probably be consulting with people, and it'll be available, the site. If you have a question, you want to know where to get this or that, or you want to have a consult or something, you just that that email you're going to give them, Steve, it comes directly to me. Even though it's an info at, that one comes directly to me. We set it up that way so that I could answer these questions. So yeah, that's probably what we'll be doing. So
Well, I appreciate that. I just wanted to let
so,
folks know that you're
yeah.
going to want to go over, and I'm going to have the links in my description box in the description. But I wanted us to shift gears and talk about a little bit about they St. Jude, Fred Hutchison, blah, 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 Children's Hospital, billions and billions and billions, I said it 3 times, raised annually, yet to change any of their protocols as far as I know of, yet to see any major transformations. Yeah, there's some kids that go through it, but they don't tell you about all the other ones that don't. The the amount of money that comes into these organizations. Talk to us about the fact that there is no. We had a mutual friend on, Sam, who is the Kagan guy. He was a chemist. He worked for the pharmaceutical companies, and they were saying, "Oh, here, let's come up with new ways of, this and that." And he started looking at it from a cellular level, a molecular level, and he goes, "This ain't going to do nothing. This isn't doing anything. All this money, it's not doing anything to cure anything." So let's talk about that, where people have donated so much money and time for all these organizations, and then all these cancer awareness things, the pink ribbon, all that, and how much of that, pink washing is part of it. But talk to us about the fact that this money never goes to true healing processes.
Well, I can give you one example right out of the chute that will explain everything else. And that's that the American Cancer Society is probably the largest 501 in the United States dealing with cancer. And I know a gentleman who had worked for them was kind of disgusted. He worked out in the field with the fact that all of the bigwigs were driving brand new cars. Some of them were making up to $1 million and more per year. And so he wanted to know where all their money went. So he figured out that 17% or less actually went to their mission. And I can tell you, if 17% or less goes to my mission, the IRS is going to shut us down as a 501c3. And so that is what is going on. But you're almost immune though, Steve. You need to know if you're aligned with big pharma, which they all are. They become immune. We know of large organizations that we think, wow, that sounds kind of corrupt to me. And they exist and they go on and on and on. They exist to exist, not that they're um, anything coming out of the American Cancer Society isn't helping cancer people.
No.
We're the ones helping people with cancer, and many organizations like ourselves who are telling people the truth and giving them alternatives. What we do is not alternative because that's become a dirty word in the medical fields. Oh, they're alternative. They're no good. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain,
Right.
type thing. But we're only alternative unless in that we do it differently than they do.
Yep.
If you want to talk something that's alternative in that it really doesn't work well, if at all of the medical associations are really alternative medicine. We are the true medicine that was founded by God, and we take what we do from plants and from the earth, and because that's what we were given to heal us. And you can see that even in the drugs that are made now. They try and digitalis, comes from foxglove, and all of these. Your aspirin comes from salicylic acid, which comes from what
Bark.
bark of willow trees or whatever. And so, but it has to be synthesized because they can't take the raw product and use it because they can't patent it.
Yes.
Have to synthesize it into something that they can patent. But if you synthesize it, it's not going to work very well at all, and you're not going to find anything that is going to make it homogeneous or synergistically working together. But that's what happens. So yeah, they've got a stranglehold on medicine, and what do you do? I mean, for crying out loud, ultimately, what we do is we go out of business because we can't. It takes money, and it takes big money to fight them. And companies like ours don't have that big money because we're investing everything that we get into the cancer patients.
Yes.
Oh, what a novel idea, huh?
Yes.
Instead of investing in machines that do mammography or things of that nature, and that's what it's about. Now
Well,
that doesn't badmouth. I don't want to badmouth Fred Hutch, or Fred Hutch is just down the road from us.
yep.
Some people get some good results down there. The children's hospitals, the St. Jude. Yes, no one knows how many of the kids are coming out the back door in a box. Because it's all experimental, especially when it gets to children. That's why you'll see organizations that are like ours. They don't work with children. And you know why? Because one child dies on their watch, they're finished. They're
Oh,
done.
wow.
We work with children. We do it vicariously, as
Yes.
you might think. But we don't tell parents or children that we can cure you. We still never do that.
Nope.
And by watching the ads on TV, and you know who I'm talking
Yep.
about, this is where you go for the cure, right? Well, that's a false statement. Although some children have been helped, we have to confess that.
Yep.
That's why we just have to be very careful with what we say. But at the same time, let's tell people the truth. If you're going to treat children with experimental drugs, okay, but give them good food. Give them organic food. Do some other things that have an opportunity to help them. And that's what I would say to them. Nothing I say is going to get them away from what they're doing. But I want to add in some supplements. I want to add in some organic foods. I don't want to just pay lip service to them because a lot of those big hospitals now will say, well, we're changing their diet. Yeah, what? You're still giving them milk. You're still working on the food pyramid. Give me a break. I would not go to a registered dietitian for anything now. And that doesn't, I'm not maligning the person that is that dietitian. What I'm saying is, where did you get your information? This is old fish information. Milk does not help people. There's nothing that children can get in milk that they can't get somewhere else organically. And that includes calcium. The calcium in milk right now, and the calcium supplements that people take, they go through 11 different iterations before they become usable in the body.
Oh,
So
I
your body
see.
has to process it through 11 different processes, and it never gets there. That's why it's loading your veins and your arteries right now. That's why we have calcium deposits and bone spurs. Whereas if you take plant calcium, calcium lactate, one thing it goes through in the body and it becomes completely usable for the body. Isn't
Wow.
it a miracle? Isn't it a miracle?
Wow.
You so, but it's not. It's just common sense, which is uncommon today. We know that.
Well, and it's because I'm as guilty as anybody else of being marketed to my entire life.
Yeah, we all.
Milk makes, the you and I both remember Mark Spitzer, the 7-time gold medal winner, Mark Spitz.
Spitz, yeah.
And he had that mustache, that white mustache, drink your milk, you know. But in this book, Confessions of a Medical Heretic, he talks about how many of these machines that these companies invest in, these big, huge machines to do all these testings, mammograms, you name it. And I just heard about, was it MRIs and X-rays and all that. And in one place, they discovered that the MRI was being done, but the person kept bringing the same chart in from everybody. They didn't even look at. They didn't even know that it was a different person. It was just they were. So the fact is, a lot of these things they test, and it costs you so much money, and they have all this overhead. They're forced to buy all this technology. It costs so much money, so they have to make their money back by putting you through it. I know people personally who've gone to the hospital, and when they go in there for one thing, they test them for 50 other things, and they come out and their bill's $20,000. And so a lot of these testing, as this doctor was saying, Mendelsohn said, is nonsense. You don't need it. You can test by pushing on a certain part of your body and going, oh, there's a pain. Well, that relates to this. Oh, over here. Talk to us a little bit about how all these, and the mammogram, how it actually causes, and then the biopsies, because you and I talked about this. Another individual that we know was saying that when every time they go in to a breast and they do a biopsy, because they think there's a lump, and they do that a time and again, it builds up scar tissue. Mm-hmm. And now when you X-ray or you do it, you can't tell if there's a lump or scar tissue. And it ends up causing problems. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah. Mammographies, I loathe them. And when women can do other testing that, is far better. The problem is, yes, the equipment very expensive, but a mammogram is going to only recognize a tumor in there when it has at least 4 billion cells. And 4 billion cells is the size of a pea. So the mammogram can't catch it unless it's at least that big. And by that time, it could have been growing 8 years in the breast. So that's not early detection. Thermography is early detection. Even though it can't tell you thermography specifically that it's cancer, it can tell you by the heat signature of the body, wherever it might be, in this case, the breasts, they can tell you where there are anomalies that we need to maybe do further testing. And so it's a non-contact type of thing, and much superior in my estimation. But the problem is furthered by the fact that doctors now are encouraging women to get mastectomies when they have something called DCIS, which is ductal carcinoma in situ. Women will know what that is. When it's not even cancer, it's been declassified. It never should have been cancer. It's a precancerous condition. And they're saying get a mastectomy. And at times they're saying just have a bilateral mastectomy. So you don't get it in the other breast too, and you can rebuild them both at the same time. And then women get cancer in their reconstructed breasts. My gosh, how long does it keep going? Their lives are being destroyed by doctors who may well be good meaning, but they're not doing the right things for the women. And it all goes back to money again. It goes back to the equipment that you're talking about. An MRI is so expensive. CTs are expensive. MRI is even much more. If you've been in an MRI, you can be in that machine for at least an hour. CTs are faster if you have them with contrast. They're not quite as fast, but still very, very fast, and can show you a lot. The diagnostics, I have to say, are obviously better than they've ever been. They're not as good as we're hoping they can be, but they're better than they've ever been. But I would I would do thermography, and I've done thermography because I had to do it because I wanted to ask all the questions and I wanted to find out all about it. So I've had thermography done from my brain all the way down to my thighs, because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see how they read it and all of that. So I encourage women. It's in the book too. You're going to find this stuff, most of the stuff we've talked about in the book. And if you don't, get in touch with me.
Well, and it reminds me of the way that doctors dealt with wounds or shots or anything during the war between the states, the Civil War, was to cut it off, just amputate it.
They didn't have any choice at that time. Yeah.
They didn't have a choice, and they figured this is the best way. Let's just cut it off. And
Yep.
and you know, before that it was let's bloodlet. So let's put some
Yep.
leeches on you. Let's do this. And then in other cases, I mean, we've come a long way. So let's say that we've come a long way in a lot of respects. And so we're not bad mouthing, but
Mhm.
but the protocols are based. A lot of the protocols that go on in hospitals are handed down to them from the CDC or the National Health Institutes and all these. It comes from a top down. And so the
Sure.
doctor gets his thing and he says, well, if so-and-so comes in, this is what our protocols are. If so-and-so comes in, this is the protocols. And if you deviate, you may get in trouble
Sure.
because,
Yeah.
and that's where we saw this in the last 3 years, why people didn't make it out of the hospital when they should have, was they were
Yeah.
following protocols that were not consistent with the way things had been previously. So we want to do this. I want us to shift gears before we run out of time. Just a couple more things, Bob. Let's talk about Bob's 5-step protocols. And I know you're going to have that available on your website, but just briefly, your 5-step protocols. What is that about?
Well, it's the simplistic form is 5 steps. And each step, has a few things that you need to do. Like step 1 is diet. If you're not going to eat the right diet, you're going to struggle to get well or stay well. And we know that. So we produce for you what things work and what don't, So diet is fundamental. Then in addition to diet, you've got to put the right fluids in your body because people are drinking Coca-Cola and booze and beer and wine coolers and everything, milk and everything, but anything that's good for them. And they drink tap water. Tap water's poison. People should know that by now. It's got fluoride and chlorine in it. And so I use a Kangen water machine. I recommend people do that. And it's a little expensive, but I think it changes your life. And scientifically, I can sit down and I'm not going to go through it now, but tell you 4 things scientifically that it does. I can't tell you what will cure your cancer or anything. But what I will tell you is scientifically, we look at this and everything else, and this is what it does for you. And you'll say, oh my gosh, those are great things. And they are. So that's the second thing. Third thing is the right supplementation. And you'll read about that in the book. A lot of things that we say you can utilize. Don't get into the book and say, I'm going to take everything that's in here. Don't do that because that's not what it's designed for. And if you have questions, you can get in touch with us still now. And we can tell you what maybe the primary things are today that we would be doing as far as supplementation is concerned. And then you need detoxification. That's item number 4. And we talked about that in the PIO and other ways to do that, because if you don't detox, you're going to struggle to get to where you need to be. And people will understand that. I mean, you need to wash out your cells, you need to wash out your organs because otherwise, especially your liver is going to store it. And we've seen people storing things in their liver for 40 years. When an LSD dose came out 40 years later, because the body couldn't metabolize it all and it stayed in the liver until a PIO session brought it out. And the guy went on a trip for 1 minute.
All those psilocybin mushrooms.
And it was funny.
Yeah.
But we need to detox. That's 4. And the 5th thing, the last thing is exercise. understanding that someone's flat on their back with cancer, they're not going to exercise. That's not what we're talking about. But if you're not, we need to get the fluids moving through our body, the oxygen. Cancer hates oxygen. We need to get it moving through our body. We need to get our lymph system moving. Your lymph system is part of your detox system. And if you can't, it doesn't have a pump, though. You need to move it. You need to find a way to move it. And we do that through exercise or lymph massage, rebounding. Get on one of those little mini trampolines, what's called a rebounder, and just lightly bounce on it. Don't jump up in the air like a trampoline, but just lightly bounce on it. That gets your lymph system moving. And so there's different ways to exercise and detox. So those are the 5 basic things.
Well, and I think we have the cancer paradigm. When you go on to the website, folks, you're going to find Bob's 5-step protocols, the cancer paradigm, the anti-cancer diet products, and then you have videos and resources. So, Bob, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to mention before we close up shop here?
No, I think that does it. Just reminding everyone that for a while you'll still be able to get in touch with me if you have any questions. And I do email freely. Phone calls, not so much unless we set up a consult and then we have an opportunity to do that. But you would request it through an email. So still be in touch with me, and I'll probably carry on for some time, maybe the rest of my life. I don't know. And helping people through consults and things like that might be a different way to get a hold of me at that time. And we'll make that evident, though, if that's the way that we do it.
Great. Well, and tell people where they can find you again.
You can find me at info@americanaci.org. info@americanaci.org. And that comes directly to me. Or if you go to our website and it says contact us, that also comes directly to me. So you can reach me both ways.
Great. Well, thank you, Bob, for coming on. And I want to thank you folks for joining me. If you guys like what I'm doing, make sure to like and share the show and share it with your friends. So until next time, this is Steve Johann saying, be a lion and not the prey. Please note the views expressed on this show may not align with those of our media partners, sponsors, audience, or host, or guests, but that's okay. We're big boys and girls, not victims, here in the Lion Zone.